The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language.
Shall we begin?
Smiley is suspicious, Percy.
You won't know who to trust. Let's begin.
Welcome back, fellow spy nerds, to the Spies Like Us podcast. That is, of course, the podcast where we discuss the tradecraft of films and television shows. In this case, it's a television show. I'm Todd. With me, as always, is my trusty buddy, Fred Kennedy.
Hi, nerds.
Hello. We are talking about The Recruit this time. That was a request from a friend of the show. I'm blanking on the name right now. I'm a little fuzzy today. It is a 2022 television series with an 8-episode first season that has been renewed for a future second season. It just came out late last year. Currently on Netflix. Heavily features the CIA with an interesting focus on the CIA's legal department. Something we haven't seen before. It is contemporary but fictional. Although the show's co-creator, did in fact work for the CIA as a lawyer, and he claims that some of the show is based on his direct experiences. More on him later. The show does also include some very fantastical elements. The most fantastical being, and I think sticks out kind of like a bit of a sore thumb, is the prototype robot that's intended to function as an interrogator. There are Russian agents involved in the story as well. Although if I remember right, if I caught it right, I think they're mostly like working for the Russian mafia more so than, or oligarchs, than they are like KGB directed. Right now, I don't remember if the FSB, remember that's what we call the KGB these days, makes a direct appearance. Another agency that comes into play is the United States CENTCOM, CENTCOM. That is actually more of a military agency. It's one of the 11 command structures of the Department of Defense. They do maintain some of their own intelligence gathering and analytic activities, but later in the show we're going to talk about whether or not CENTCOM is correctly portrayed in this show. Spoiler alert, I don't think so. The portrayal of the CIA in this show, I think this is the number one thing you would tell someone about this show. It's kind of funny. It's not as funny as Slow Horses, but it's a dark, you'd say a dark comedy, dramatic comedy. I think the first thing that you would tell someone about this show is how different, the unique spin it has on the CIA. Fred, could you tell us a little about how the CIA is portrayed in this show? And how it's different?
Well, we see this rookie come into a very hostile workplace where information is not shared. In fact, he's told not to share information. Everything is so compartmentalized, and that flies in the face about everything we learned or thought we learned about 9/11 to connect the proverbial dots. And I'm surprised this show, which is many years after 9/11, actually bragged about that kind of a workplace. Our hero, the only way he can get information is by bribing colleagues. Like the one woman, she only agrees to help him if he goes out with her, okay? And then there's another guy who's in SOG, S-O-G, Janice Ferber, right, who's a junkie, and he's in a perpetual state of on the brink of a nervous breakdown, right? And the only way he'll help our hero is if he agrees to get him drugs, right? So this goes, like I say, flies in the face about what we know. And this CIA itself, if it's able to do its job to keep us all safe, it does in fact need to share information, not only interdepartmentally, but with the FBI, as we learned from 9/11. We get a cynical lesson from Dawn Gilbane, who's an agent out in the field, who cynically tells him that Working at the CIA is like a never-ending game of musical chairs. Everyone is maneuvering to figure out who will have a seat when the music stops. Easiest way to make sure you have a seat is to hamstring the guy next to you. So that's about as cynical advice as you could give someone. And as I say, it flies in the face of everything we have learned about connecting the proverbial dots.
I think that sums it up nicely, especially very nice quote there. Yeah, it's a very cynical view of the CIA, where no one's interested in help. Everyone's just trying to throw someone else under the bus before they get thrown under the bus. A real rat race. Um, so so let's talk about this. The co-creator, Adam Ciralsky. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'll spell it in case someone wants to Google it. It's Ciralsky. Um, I'm not sure when he started working for the CIA, but he left in 1999 at age 28. And the Owen character is clearly, I think, meant to be a fictionalized version of himself. Owen being our main character, the recruit, the new guy that Fred just referenced. Um, he was described in Nina Totenberg's piece on discrimination within the CIA for NPR as a Wunderkind of the national security establishment. Um, he was such a hotshot that the CIA offered him a slot in its legal honors program. And during his tenure there, he handled a variety of sensitive matters and was honored with an exceptional performance award by the director of the Central Intelligence Agency at that time, being George Tenet. Um, Totenberg's piece, discrimination. Basically, the sort of famous thing about Sorelsky is that he sued the CIA for discriminating against him for being a Jew. Um, what happened was, but I mean, apparently he was doing a great job. Uh, President Clinton's counterterrorism czar offered him a position at the National Security Council, and the CIA's counterespionage group totally blocked that rotation, citing and they have documents citing concerns about his Jewish roots. Um, as a result of the lawsuit, a bunch of pretty ugly stuff came up, including them rigging his lie detector tests to make sure he would fail them. And there's people involved with the CEG, referring to him as that little Jew bastard, and it just really did not look good. So here we're looking at a picture of a guy with maybe an axe to grind against the CIA, right, Fred?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think.
Now, when he called the lawsuit off in his public statement, he said he was still, quote, proud of his service within the CIA and had a deep and abiding respect for the organization and its mission. I'm not seeing that on display in this show. So
No, maybe he's speaking. Maybe he's speaking ideally, even though what he observed wasn't in the ideal. But maybe
now,
he's speaking about the ideal mission of the CIA.
right.
That's just a guess on my part.
So a guy with an axe to grind, but that's not the axe that he chooses to grind in this show. Instead, he portrays the CIA as just being, well, obviously he felt like he was being backstabbed. So that is kind of fitting into the theme of this show. But there's none of the racism is occurring here. Although I'll say that's a show or a movie or a story I'd like to see told. I think that's a great story. So the racism stuff is not explored, and also the CIA is famously, from my understanding, has always been and still is a very waspish establishment.
Modeled after M15 and M16. We saw that with, even those guys are British, but we saw the class distinctions there, which is part of the reason why they couldn't detect Philby.
Right. And, it seems like every other CIA movie wants to show a black guy as the head of the CIA. And that's just never happened. Not even close. There haven't even been any Catholics as directors of the CIA. Um, but in the show, the show, of course, is, just as diverse as TV is always. And, hey, I'm not here to grind an axe against diversity in television at all. That's not where I'm coming at here. But in this case, realistically, the CIA is very, 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 very white. But in the show, we have Owen's boss, the head of CIA's legal administration, is an African American, and there's a case agent, which is a woman of Middle Eastern descent, which I think kind of just stretches the. I mean, I like to see her in a TV show. I'm not complaining.
But think about that too. There's also a self-serving interest of getting more cultural folks in there, because think about some of the countries that the CIA and M16 for that matter would like to infiltrate.
Yes.
You're not going to send a white guy in there, right? And I heard some of this debate about a African American or African British James Bond. Well, why not? The Brits have quite a population of African Brits, right? And who would better infiltrate some of those modern day countries in the Middle East than a Brit who's dark skinned, right? Mm-hmm. So you would think both M16 and the CIA would have a self-serving interest of getting folks of color recruited to infiltrate into some of these countries that they're, they interested in intelligence.
Definitely want to recruit them as assets. I'm not sure if they make it to the level of case manager in the modern CIA, and they definitely don't make it up into the top brass.
Right. Which is foolish because, like I say, there's a self-serving interest, you would think,
yes.
With that.
Yeah. So, all in all, I have no way of telling the audience whether or not I think this portrayal of the CIA is accurate or fair. It is fun.
The thing that strains credibility on my part is, okay, the title tells us it's a recruit or a rookie, right?
Right.
We see the rookie mistakes he makes, right? His boss points out that you never put somebody's real name next to their pseudonym on the same piece of paper. He does that. Oh, okay. He also makes a classic foolish mistake where he tries to use a cell phone and he has to be told you can't do that because they can be traced. Okay. So here's this guy making these honest rookie mistakes, and yet they give him all these impossible assignments that even a veteran agent would find challenging. That's the part that strains my credibility in this whole thing.
Indeed. But I liked it. I liked the show. Skipping ahead.
No, it's fun. You can't, slice and dice it too much because it's not that kind of movie. It's a fun kind of comedic spy show. So
almost a spoof. We'll get into the rating at the end of the show, but it's a weird mix of like a lot of really accurate stuff and some really questionable premises.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to the makeup department in this show. Someone I think is paying really close attention to the timeline, and like if Owen gets like punched in the face in episode 2, you're gonna see that bruise still there in episode 3, but it's gonna be a little bit more gone in episode 4. The wound on his finger just keeps healing over time until by the end of the season, he's just got a little Band-Aid on it. I thought that was kind of cool. My last note, before we get to the briefing room and start talking about the tradecraft of the show, is I just want to, because I don't think it happened in one of the episodes that we chose to cover. But I really love the White Claw joke when the bartender tries to give him a martini, and he insists on a White Claw instead. I thought that's just a nice bit of this is not James Bond. humor.
Right. And in the contemporary youth that he is, that would be drinking something like that.
Right. Yeah. Park bench check. Did we have any meetings on park benches in the show?
I don't think so.
Nope.
No underground parking garages either.
Actually, we kind of did. But
Yeah.
it was a spin. It was a little spin on the sitting in a underground parking garage, where instead of him meeting to discuss classified information with someone else, or share some juicy stuff, he's there to have like a heart to heart with his roommate about some stuff that he can't talk about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
That's right.
I thought that's kind of like a take on it. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm gonna nominate as another cousin of the park bench, being whisked into dragged off the street and whisked into a limo to have a conversation with with somebody.
Not Bob.
Yeah, we had one of those scenes. All right, to the briefing room.
To the Batmobile.
Retinal scan complete. Validating security clearance. Clearance granted. You may now enter the briefing room.
What we're doing is we're going to talk in detail about episodes 1, 5, and 8. So something from the beginning, the middle, and the end.
My point about Owen, being such a rookie, but then given all these difficult jobs, at one point, and I put down as if speaking for me, not Bob, says to Nyland how he is baffled by the amount of connection this youth has in such a short span of time.
Right.
And I said, not Fred feels the same way. He's given so much information, and then here's this kid who doesn't know enough to keep a pseudonym separate from the person's real name, or that a cell phone can be traced. And yet he gives the SOG guy brilliant information to clog up his potential missile controversy. Maybe that was just an outsider thinking outside the box, but I thought that was a little too ingenious for a rookie to have that kind of advice.
Sure. Let's be clear for people who haven't seen the show. Owen is not entirely a fuck up. He's just in over his head. He actually is a very smart guy and can think on his feet and perform under pressure. But the comedic premise of the show is that he's just in over his head.
But he seems to talk his way out of all this trouble, like when he was sent to Beirut on that dangerous mission. He talked his way out of they were trying to get one of these guys to give maternity money or alimony or something like that. And he does a real, silver tongue kind of a convincing job, convincing this tough guy to go along with it. Nyland keeps sending him on these dangerous missions to retrieve Max, whether it's in Geneva or Phoenix or in prison, right? He gives him all these missions, and then he just says, keep me posted. It's just one thing after the next. And then I feel that, when he goes off to on that first mission, where his two colleagues don't tell him he's got to get a proper passport or the proper protocol, and he's tortured by Dawn Gilbane there. I thought that was a fireable offense. They could have gotten him killed there. It was Yemen, I think, that he went off to do that. And Nyland didn't tell him to go. Nyland didn't, because he tells him later, I did not tell you to go and do that. But I guess he thought he was showing initiative and went off half-cocked.
Well, I think Nyland, who's his boss, actually does want his agents to take care of things and not tell him what's going on unless he needs to know. Everyone here doesn't want to know more than they have to. So yeah, episode 1. Okay, so our guy is Owen. His boss is Nyland. Nyland shoves Owen just on day two of him working here, up to threaten a member of Congress against who wants
Yeah.
to, reveal some CIA secrets, maybe in the Senate Intelligence Committee or something. Owen doesn't even know what the secrets are that he's supposed to threaten this guy against revealing. His coworkers, Violet and Lester, they're going to be recurring characters. These are the two that are primarily plotting against him, and don't
Because of pure jealousy.
pure.
And Nyland kind of makes it worse because he puts him Owen in charge and has those two be his subordinates.
Well, that'll come later in the series, but yeah, they don't like that. One of the things they do, they shove onto Owen one of the crappier jobs in the office, which is to go through the gray mail file. You want to tell us what gray?
Yeah.
I like this concept right off the
But
bat.
ironically, that's the kind of drudge work you do give a rookie, right? You give him those now.
Right. Tell us what it is. Tell us what it is. Tell us what gray mail is.
Okay, gray mail are threats that the CIA constantly gets, and most of them, I guess, are phony baloney, but he's ordered to look through them to see if there's anything legitimate that should be looked into, and that's where he comes upon Max making a threat to expose some dirty deals. And as I say, that's the kind of grudge work a rookie should be given, right?
Sure. Someone's got to do it. I'm sure they get thousands of these a year, and they're going to be 99% bullshit, but someone's going to have to read them.
So there's that, right, which is something a rookie should be given. And one other thing toward the end, when Don Gilbane gives him, as you would do any rookie, as they're about to make that siege, when she says, "Stay in the fucking car." Now he doesn't, but that's the kind of thing you tell a rookie: stay in the fucking car, or truck, or whatever it was, right? So I just thought those two things jumped out at me. Those are the only two things you should have given a rookie: go through the gray mail, right, and stay in the fucking car.
But the gray mail is our setup for the, our intro into like the main plot of the season.
The plot, yeah.
Because he finds
that's where he runs into Max, and he keeps being told that the information that she's given you, no one should know, let alone the not Bob thing,
right?
Unless she was, what was it, a side pocket or
a pocket asset?
Yeah, right.
So right. Max Meladze is indeed the real deal. Her threat is not based on just made up stuff. She really does have a lot of dirt on the CIA.
She's the real teacher in him, or of him.
Yes.
She teaches him more about the trade than Nyland or his two associates, in that she keeps telling him everything's leverage, right? And she, right from the start, she said, when he says, "How can I trust you?" And he said, "Only when our goals are the same." And throughout the whole story, she keeps showing through her, not only her words, but her deeds, that everything she does is leverage. And she keeps exposing the stupid or the foolish information he gives her just by talking to her. Like when he talks about, who did you meet Yemen? And he says, her. He uses a pronoun. "Oh, you idiot. You just told us that it was a her," right?
Right, yeah.
And he also, his name, right? Just basically his name gave her, she then took his name and went on social media and found all about him, right? And she keeps pointing out all these stupid mistakes. So in fact, more than Nyland or more than anybody else, she's his teacher in tradecraft.
Do you think they should trust her? is one of my big questions. I don't think
Well,
so. I think
no, but she kind of admits that throughout the whole movie. Like until our goals are the same, no. She's quite honest about it.
right. Right. Yeah. I think she's trouble, and I think as the story goes into season 2, we're gonna eventually decide it was probably just a
Well,
bad idea.
well, what complicates things is when she starts, and I'm getting ahead of myself maybe a little bit here, but
Go
when
for
she
it.
starts to fall in love with him, that, like in most spy stories,
Hmm.
when she starts to fall in love with him, that sort of complicates things and muddies the waters about her, um, about her tactics.
Right. So this other thing too about her being a pocket asset, what that means in the show is that there's no record of her. Um,
Yeah,
she's not in the files.
which
Everything's
is another thing he revealed to her. He goes, "When you asked me who my handler was, that tells me you don't have a hard folder on me, right?"
yeah, from the get go. She's just every other thing that comes out of his mouth. She's like, "That's a mistake. That's a mistake. You just screwed up there." Now I don't know for sure. I don't work for the CIA, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Um,
Or
but
I'd have to kill you.
I don't like the idea of this pocket asset kind of thing. I actually believe the CIA keeps records of everything somewhere. Um,
We saw that in the report, didn't we?
but she knows stuff and she knows names that she shouldn't know if she doesn't exist in the system. Um, he finds that one of the things she referenced, or that that was in her threat. There's some complicated stuff. He figures it out. PW is a code for Belarus. Butcher is the name of an operation that happened there in 2009. Um, Somehow he figures out that the case officer for Butcher was Dawn. That's our black lady heavy with the evil eyes. That just her eyes just promise murder uh, in every conversation. I think she's great. Um, and he is an operative in Yemen. You mentioned this scene a little bit ago. Um, it was never explained to me how he found Dawn in Yemen, and I'm going to give minus 5 points for that. Um, Dawn confirms that Max had connections with high-level Russian intelligence in Belarus, and gives him the musical chairs advice. Um, you as like you said, Nyland isn't unhappy that he went there without telling him. He's just making sure that it's clear on the record, like, I did not tell you to go there. So his hands are clean. Um, Max tells him that she's got CIA documents kept in a storage facility, and tells him where to get those. I forget exactly why. Why does she want them? I don't remember. Um, Nyland advises Owen to get FBI coverage to recover the files, and he says, if I heard it right, do you need anyone from the kitchen to help you? The kitchen gets used as slang for the CIA in a couple scenes in the series. I've never heard that before. Can't find any validation for it online, but I like it as a term. Um, Owen can't get help. He can't get through to the FBI. The only way he's trying to get through to the FBI is by calling their automated phone number. You would think he would be able to um, show up at a local office and get some help, but he goes it alone for some reason that also not explained. Some Spanish drug dealers are waiting there watching the storage facility.
He doesn't try too hard though. Once he gets that answering thing, he doesn't. He just gives up quickly and goes along.
I don't think it makes sense that these guys are watching the storage facility on the day that he shows up. There's no story justification for that. What if they've just been sitting there for years, waiting for someone to show up? If they know the stuff is in there, then they should just go in and get it. Maybe they know that he met her at the prison.
Yeah.
They're just following him to see what he's doing, because they do have connections with her. They've done business with her before. He gets into the storage locker. He gets the bag with the documents. This drug dealers steal the bag from him. When they open, it turns out it's booby trapped. It sprays acid on their faces. Again, great job on the makeup department, and the way that in later episodes of the show, we see the scarring left over from the acid. And I don't know if she planned it to go down this way. Like, how could she have planned this? If the way she had it set up, Owen was going to open the bag. He was going to get sprayed with acid. That's no good. It doesn't seem to serve her purposes at all. I call it -5 points for the story. And then it gets pretty complicated in that Owen realizes that Max is setting him up, and that there's a very compelling interchange of power dynamics between them. He's fucked if he doesn't help her, and she's fucked if she doesn't help him. So they're just stuck together.
This is where the leverage theme comes in, that Max keeps schooling him throughout the whole series, right? Leverage.
Yeah, and that's totally like the name of the game of this show in terms of narrative. It's everybody leverage against this person, and it equals leverage against this person.
Could have been the title.
Yeah, leverage. back and around we go. And I thought that's part of what makes the show pretty entertaining, and some of it feels pretty realistic. So kind of that's episode 1. Owen gets sucked into this job of having to try to get secure Max's cooperation and silence by getting her out of prison. And she, I guess what she's done is she's tangled it up in a way that he has to get her out. He can't handle it in any other way. Skipping ahead to mid-season, season 5. Now, this is why I picked episode 5. Episode 5. Reason I usually pick the episode right after the middle of a TV season is usually this is when the plot shifts into a new direction. That's the case here. Episodes 1 through 4 dealt with him getting her out of prison, finding out some other stuff, but in episode 5, she is out. And this is also the other major event, other than her getting released from prison, is we find out that Dawn and Max's old handler, a guy named Xander, are working together, and they are either going to put her back in the field or kill her. Max gets taken back to her house and got 3 CIA agents there to sit on her, basically. But she has a kick-ass secret escape route and what I call a boogie bag. Some people call it a go bag, but I love a boogie bag, where that's where you got your little stash of, you've got a gun, you've got a bunch of money, you've got some fake IDs or stuff. You just got everything you need to do if you just need to get on the lam right away. And a really cool underground tunnel that leads her to another house where she's got a car stashed. So that's just the sort of thing I just really love to see. My characters, and when I play Dungeons and Dragons type games, they're always I have a fetish for it. I'm always setting up some kind of elaborate escape route for when the shit goes down, even though it never really happens that way. But I'm always looking for my character to be able to pull one of these scenes off. Now, supposedly Owen thinks he's out. He thinks his job is done, right? And he's happy. He's happy to not be involved with Max Melodze anymore. But the Secret Service gets sent to collect him by someone that we call Not Bob. Not Bob apparently was a CIA legend. Even people in the CIA don't know maybe who he really was or whatever, but like everyone's heard of him. He's kind of a ghost story. But apparently he was just like really highly respected and feared. He's now chief of staff for the White House. And at some point, I don't remember exactly when, but Max had told Owen about Not Bob. She had said that he was her handler, or that he was feeding her information of some kind. Now, Not Bob denies this, which I think he would, but in this case, I think the fact is he actually doesn't know about Max Melazze. And his chief concern is that someone is claiming to be Not Bob, and that person is in communications with Max, knows enough about Not Bob, including his internal nickname, to pull off the ruse, and that means someone inside Langley, and that means potentially a mole or some other form of traitor. This scene, by the way, with Not Bob and Noah, I think really shows off Noah Centinela. With Owen, who's played by Noah Centinela. I think Noah Centinela, this is one of his best scenes. This guy is a real good comedic actor. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. Good looking, too. We get a cool scene where Max, who's now out of prison, she's trying to raise money. She's going to talk to her old drug dealer associates, who have reason to be really mad at her because they got sprayed in the face with acid from her documents bag. But where she catches up with him is in a class where he's taking, what is it? Oh, he's taking an advanced course on the psychology of aggression.
Yeah, it's hysterical to me because I think it's supposed to be an ironic joke that here's this sadistic hitman taking courses on compassion, aggression, and violence, and how much of it's innate, as if he's just, intrinsically wants to know this, but it's to aid him in his trade in a practical way. So
Right.
I said, talk about ironic detachment.
Yeah, he says, yeah, in my line of work, I deal with a lot of narcissists
Right.
and psychopaths.
So normally when we study, all of us in Psych 101, we study these things for their intrinsic value and, and isn't that neat, and nature nurture and what makes us, the way we are. But this guy's actually, kind of learning it for his trade, which is hilarious.
Max needs help dealing with the drug dealer guy. Basically, she's got a network of safe houses that she's set up, and apparently she's got a system that is like a trade secret, but she's willing to sell it to the drug cartels so that she has enough money to return to Russia. She calls Owen to get his help with it. I think it's kind of lame that she doesn't have anyone else that she can call. But I think the show just wants to drag Owen back into the story, right?
Well, yeah, and back to the leverage theme again. They both need each other.
There's a cool scene in season 5 where Dawn calls Owen's attention to. Oh, so now Dawn is going to be the one that is going to wants to put Max Melazze back into the field. She has a cool metaphor that she uses for why and how she's going to use Owen in this. In the halls of the CIA offices, there's a display case of a single shot pistol of a type that was dropped to the resistance in World War II.
It only had to be good once, because the thought being if you killed a Nazi with it, you could get his better gun. And of course, the Germans made great guns, the Luger, one of them. And she's brutally honest in this because she uses this metaphor of this gun and compares it to him. And he says, "You're the expendable gun that I'm using to get her." And she's telling him right there that you're expendable, and no matter what, even if you die, you're just a means to an end.
Right. I've never heard that story, but I love it.
No, me either.
While they're handling their business, Max pressures Owen into buying her staying in a very expensive hotel room. Owen can't get the money from the CIA. Instead, he has to call his rich ex-girlfriend, and kind of con the money out of her. At first, I didn't like this. I really thought the CIA should be ready to pay for this kind of thing, or that that's right. He said, because he's so new, he hasn't got his, what do you call it? His, when you get paid back for work expenses, there's some kind of account you need to set up. He hasn't even had to get that set up. And also it's possible that the CIA in this case just wouldn't want this $1,700 to show up on their budget. Speaking of, and this is where we started in with the romance. I don't want to call it a romance, but Max has romantic inclinations toward Owen. Owen is, in fact, through the show, portrayed as, and I'll take their word for it. Kind of a piece of man meat. Chicks dig him. What I like about this is it's a departure of the Bond formula, where yes, he is very sexy. He is very attractive to members of the opposite sex. But in this show, it's always like that attractiveness isn't something that works in his favor. It's always something that's like creates more problems for him, which I think is fun.
Although he used it as leverage with the one gal in the CIA who said she'd share with him if he'd date her, remember?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. In the hotel room, there's a nice piece of what I would call positive spy points. I think it's really good, where takes the opportunity of the chief of staff, who we know is not Bob, being on the screen, on the TV screen, in like kind of a panel discussion, like a Fox News panel show or something. And he takes that opportunity to say, okay, real quick, look, one of those people is not Bob. Which one is it? And she doesn't know. She does not know. Now, that tells him something really important, or that the language of the show and the way it's shot shows us that Owen seems to have figured out something really important here. And I still don't know what it is. You got any ideas?
Only that she knows the name, but really not who it is. That name has been floating around like Kaiser Soze, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And they just don't have. She doesn't know who he is.
So if we had any doubts about not Bob, his denial.
They call that a legend. They call that a legend, don't they? When they create these characters, we saw that in the Old Man.
Well, I know at least in France, a legend is what they call your cover. Your cover identity.
Yeah, but I think it can also be a persona.
Okay.
Like Kaiser or Soze, whether there's a person behind it or not. And in the Old Man, the CIA agent who went native there and started to get a great, a real notorious reputation. And we find out it's the younger version of the Old Man. All right. One other interesting point in episode 5, I thought, had to do with Owen kind of sizing up his own relationship with Max and how the rest of the CIA are treating her and him. And in that, I thought Owen had a very ballsy answer to Dawn with Nyland present, right? When she asked him, why does Max want Owen to come back to Phoenix if there's nothing going on between them, which is kind of accusatory. And he says, very astutely, maybe because I kept my promise and got her out of prison while all operations did, meaning her, was abandon her after she risked her life to provide the agency with intel. And then when Dawn says she wants to reinsert Max back into her old life, Owen points out the leverage Max now has because she knows they need her, so she's testing us to see how far she can push. Pretty astute stuff for a rookie.
Yeah, he's got the brains. He's got the brains to do the job, just not the experience. It's a fun mix to watch. And then Tradecraft notes for episode 8, the final episode of the show. At this point, okay, so what's happened is she got the money from the drug cartels. She's got enough money to get back to Russia. They're pretending. Now, remember, she was a pocket asset before. So to put her out in the field again, now they're doing it. They're having to pretend that she's just been recruited, so that it look good on paper. Again, I don't like the idea of the pocket asset. This person that is so deeply involved with CIA secrets and there's no record of her. But the show at least commits to its bit, where if they're gonna put her back in, they have to. There's some things that would be easy for them to accomplish if they could just straight out say, like, we're returning her to the field, but they have to run through some hoops to make it look like this is her first assignment working with the CIA. Shoot, I forget the country, but somewhere in Europe. I think it's Germany. Maybe it was Germany. Essen. Oh, that's right. No, Max couldn't. She couldn't get the money. Why does she sell out Xander again? Xander is her old handler who betrayed her and sold her out for some reasons. So she's got a revenge motive.
She knows that Xander had an affair with the Russian mobster's wife, and the Russian mobster's wants to know who it was. And she again leveraged. She has that in her back pocket, so to speak, to use if she needs it.
Right, and what she gets out of this is money. And
well, she hopes to get that to get her back into Russia, right?
Right, because she's out of good graces with the Russian mafia, but apparently, if with enough money, she can buy her way back in. So,
and then we find out later that isn't enough either, right?
Yeah. The Russian mob guy, now finding out that it was Xander who was sleeping with his wife, gets thrown out a window, defenestrated, as it were. One of the coolest words in the English language. I honestly thought,
but we find out it's too quickly for it to be that guy, right?
Too quickly for it to be that guy. I don't understand.
Yeah,
tell me.
For Xander to be, Alex figures out, or Max figures out, they let it go. They want that to be the reason for a while, but Max knows that Xander is killed too quickly for the Russian guy to have done it, because when she just gave him the information,
really,
right, about him, that comes out, and she knows that it couldn't have been him, right? And we find out later who it really was, right? The Russian guy, on paper, it sounds like it was him because he has a reason to do it, but the killing of Xander happened too quickly for the Russian guy to have done it when he heard the information.
And you say later we find out. I didn't pick up on this. You say later we find out who did it. Who did it?
I think it's who's
Blunder.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And we don't know what her motive is yet. She's like
no, it goes on to the next season, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Let alone the other big secret about her too. We find out at the very end, right? About who she is.
Yes. There's a mystery. Let's just say there's a mystery lady. We'll get to her in just a minute. I thought it was interesting that Violet ID'd Xander immediately. That she, Violet, that's one of Owen's coworkers. I'm not sure that there's a reason for it or a connection, but it was just interesting that when she found out that it was Xander that was thrown out the window, I think she sees him. Yeah, she sees him because they were waiting outside in the van. because Nyland sent Violet and Lester to surreptitiously keep an eye on Owen. And she recognizes Xander. Violet recognizes Xander as soon as she sees him in the street. Not sure if that means anything. Lester goes into the hotel to clean up the room, make sure there's nothing there for the police to find that the CIA doesn't want found. I thought that was well done. I give +5 points for that representation. Owen and Max are on the run after Xander's death because it looks really bad for her. And they're on a train where, as you say, he tries to make a phone call with his cell phone. She throws it out the window. Can I make another defenestration joke here?
I know he's a rookie, but how does Owen not know his phone can be used to track him? That's a rule right out of Spy 101, right?
Even I know that. So the CIA is a little flipped out about Xander's death. CIA case officer thrown out a window. Coincidentally, just when Max has shown up back in town. Of course, they don't seem to have the records to know that Max has a relationship with Xander. So I'm not sure how much of it should really stick to her, but the coincidence is enough for them to be freaked out. And this is when they get on a conference call with this guy from CENTCOM. The guy from CENTCOM seems to be in the meeting between Nyland and Violet and Lester and Dawn to be in some kind of position of authority over the CIA. Did it seem that way to you in that scene?
Yeah.
Which just does not make sense to me. Let's say again, CENTCOM is one of the commands of the Department of Defense, 11 commands, and each of them is assigned to a certain region of the globe. CENTCOM is called CENTCOM because it's the center. It's basically the Middle East. EuropeCom is called EUCOM. I guess North American, it would be like NACOM or something. And I'm not saying that CENTCOM doesn't have any intelligence operations. It's just that's not their main focus. And furthermore, what we're talking about here is operations that are happening in Europe, and especially the idea of inserting Max back into her old position within the Russian mafia, where she had very close ties to a guy who is now, I think, maybe the head of the FSB. Somebody really high in Russian intelligence.
Yeah. They want to get close to him. Want her to get close to him.
Right. So that's the double problem with having CENTCOM involved in this part is if you look at the map and the way that the Department of Defense divides the areas of responsibility, Russia falls under EUCOM. So even if CENTCOM, even if any of the Department of Defense would be involved in this kind of operation, which I don't think they would be, this is the wrong one.
Yeah. How about when this CENTCOM guy tells everybody else to leave except for Lester and Dawn? And he says that if it comes down to losing the opportunity to get Max infiltrated with this Russian guy or cutting our losses and starting over, burn the current players. Understood? So I kept waiting for him to say the old cliche, terminate with extreme prejudice.
Okay.
Because that's basically what he's saying.
Back on the train, Max uses a phone stolen from a sleeping nun to make the phone call. I'll call this plus.
Good tradecraft.
Yeah, that's good tradecraft. This is +5 points. Grab someone else's phone. In the phone call that she makes, she refers to the name of the op Butcher. Now, remember, Butcher is the operation that she and Dawn were involved in back in, I think it was like 2008, 2009 or something. Questionable spy points on mentioning the name of an operation on the phone. But now, of course, we just mentioned she's making a phone call from a stolen phone, but she's making the phone call to Dawn. Dawn's phone is not stolen. That's her actual phone. Of course, I always hear everyone say that the actual content of conversations on when people raise the concern about intelligence agencies monitoring our cell phone calls, all the experts always say, you know what? The content of the calls is not worth anything. It's the time. Yeah. It's the metadata.
You made that point. You made that point with the old man.
Oh, okay.
How they tracked him down.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember you making that. I remember you making that point there.
Yeah. The who you called, when you called, and from where,
Yeah.
that's the real juicy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we let him off the hook we let her off the hook for mentioning the name of that operation. But she really just didn't have to, you know. What you would say in that case, you would just say Belarus. You know, that thing in
Mm-hmm.
Belarus from 2008.
Yeah.
You can't prove that means anything in particular. Owen takes the opportunity while Max is on the phone to steal. Oh, no, to peruse. Now, back when they were at the bank earlier in a failed attempt to get her money, money that was supposed to be getting like wired to them or something, but there was a screw up with some time zones. Owen took an opportunity to steal a notebook that was in her safe deposit box. And while she's distracted, he takes the opportunity to kind of look through it. You know, they don't really clearly say what is in the notes, but what we're going to find out, because he's going to call Ferber, that's his stressed out, you said, junkie colleague back at the CIA. And apparently, some of the notes in the book are evidence that Havana syndrome is actually an FSB plot.
They did a thing on 60 Minutes about this.
Yep.
And you wrote that it's a cluster of idiopathic symptoms experienced mostly abroad by U.S. government officials and military personnel. The symptoms range in severity from pain and ringing in the ears to cognitive dysfunction, and were first reported in 2016 by United States and Canadian embassy staff in Havana, Cuba. And I remember 60 Minutes did a thing on this about a year ago, and I haven't heard anything more about it. So I don't know.
And they'd be getting these weird, like, headaches and nausea. And
like outside of embassies and places like that, it would be happening.
Yeah. From what I've read, this has all been reviewed very extensively, and the CIA and State Department have both concluded that it's very unlikely, or at least that's the public position. Now, but if someone were to find out that Havana syndrome, and they could actually link it to the FSB, that would be very, very valuable intel. So, two things about that. Now, the guy he's calling, Ferber, he's got, has been like a little side plot running in the background through the season. He's got a problem with a potential scandal that pertains to United States rockets that were sold in some like ill-advised operation, and however it went down, somehow they found their way into terrorist hands. Big deal. Somebody lost some important, somebody let U.S. technology get into terrorist hands. Now, the U.S. military is running an op to run in and destroy the rockets, but which that kind of solves the problem. But Ferber, his problem with this is that just if anybody even finds out the rockets got there in the first place, he's still fucked. And Owen's big idea is, okay, you can't stop that from happening, and I forget exactly how he phrases it, but something about muddying the waters.
Yeah, throw something on top of it, just to muddy, just to confuse the situation. And I read a pretty good analogy that compared that to the Iran-Contra affair.
Mm-hmm.
The Iran-Contra affair, most people know, is when Reagan sold missiles to Iran to get the hostages back, okay? That's all most people remember about it. People forget the second part of it, which was then the CIA took the proceeds and sent them to the Contras in Nicaragua. So somebody, I forgot who it was, but I read that when you make something complicated enough that people only understand half of it, you've arrived, you've won. And that's what he's trying to do. So even though that was true about the Iran-Contra, people only remember that first part of it. The Reagan sold missiles to Iran for the hostages.
Yes.
People forget, because it's too much, the second half of it, that the proceeds were sent to the Contras. In the same way, he's trying to throw in something else on top of this missile scandal just to muddy the waters, to confuse people, right?
Yeah.
Which is ingenious and probably a little too much for our rookie to be telling a hardened guy like the SOG, but
Right.
that's the story. Yeah.
Yeah, the idea is nobody will talk about the missiles.
Right.
So yeah, I give +5 points for that plan, and I think it's
That's brilliant. That is freaking brilliant.
it's one of my best tradecraft of the film. So
Yeah.
so it's just to be clear too, the way the mechanics of how they're doing it. He's taking the pictures of the notebook. He's figured out a clever way to get him to Ferber in a way that won't be traced. Like, don't email him. That's his first rookie instinct.
Yeah. What's
Ferber's
comical?
Like, no, don't email.
When Ferber's trying to instruct that flunky army guy what to do, and then the questions, he's so nervously trying to coach him into doing something simple, but then the guy starts overthinking it too much, and he's trying to tell him not to. Yeah, it's funny.
So and then he's gonna get the photos into the hands of the army guy, and the army guy is gonna pretend to have found them, and make sure you pretend to have found them like hidden away, like tucked into like they're not just, don't just say you found them sitting on the desk. That's too obvious. Right. Good stuff. Last note on that though. Now, and this kind of goes to my kind of problem with Max as a character in general, is that, like we say, like I don't believe Havana Syndrome is actually an FSB thing. I don't know for sure. But the point is, if it was, that would be incredibly valuable intel. It's weird that Max is keeping that to herself. That she hasn't told, like, what would her motivation be of not telling the CIA about that, or not using that as leverage? How can she use that as leverage somehow? I don't know.
Well, maybe, that's still in her holster that she hasn't used yet. Maybe she's decided not to use it yet. I don't know.
Sure. In the car ride over, now they're gonna turn themselves in, basically, like, or come in from the cold. Owen and Max are gonna go see Dawn, as was previously arranged, even though there's a lot of heat on them because of Xander's death. On the way, Max tells Owen a secret about Dawn. She tells him that Dawn has been running ghost assets and pocketing the money, by which I mean she's been claiming that she has assets in the field that need funding, but she keeps that money for herself, and there is actually there are no assets. They don't exist. Max says that she's doing this so that if the agency decides to liquidate her, Dawn will have to kill Owen too. This makes no goddamn sense to me at all. Is there any way you can save this from being one of the worst tradecrafts of this show? How, if Owen knowing a secret about Dawn doesn't help anything unless Dawn knows that he knows that, but that's not a disincentive for her to kill Owen.
Especially with Max falling in love with Owen.
Hey, there's that too, yeah. Pretty sure that made my list of worst tradecraft of the story. And it's just one of those stupid things I do not like in television series. I see it time and time again, is they milk, like, a secret between two characters gets milked. There's the first, you milk it for a dramatic scene when character A tells character B a secret about character C. And then at some point, character B will tell, character C that character A told him that secret. You get another dramatic scene there. And then you get later a dramatic scene where character C confronts character A about the secret. It's very transparent, not great TV writing. In a show that I thought overall was excellently written. This stood out as being sloppy and bad. And there's no payoff to it, at least not in this season. Back in DC, not Bob is visiting Nyland, where he finds out about Xander's death. He gets I don't want to say he goes ghost white, but he becomes deadly serious when he finds out that Xander is dead. Like something, he knows something. We've kind of established he doesn't know about Max, but he knows something about Xander, right? Like when he hears that Xander was killed, he says, I need to be I need to be kept so far away from this, so far away, like that you can't even see me. You have to promise me you will keep me out of this. And no one can even know we had this conversation. No one can even know that I was even here. How long do you think Nyland keeps that? And Nyland says he promises. Yeah, I understand. We are crystal clear on this. How long in like running time of the show does it take, do you think, for Nyland to tell people that that Owen? He tells Owen like basically the next chance he gets, which kind of goes to the overall theme of the show of like you can't trust anyone and just promises mean nothing.
It's the old plausible deniability claim that so many government officials seek and cling to, hide their knowledge of dirty work from, as I said, Nixon's Watergate to Reagan's Iran-Contra to W's enhanced interrogation methods.
Right. And so now we're left to wonder, so we believe not Bob when he says he doesn't know about Max, but now we know that though there's something, he's involved somehow, and that makes this whole idea that someone is pretending to be not Bob even juicier. We don't get the payoff for that in this season, but it's one of the juicier pieces that make me hungry to see what happens in season 2. Xander's death, like we said, it looks really bad. It's of high concern to everyone, including CENTCOM and various Washington interests. Max, Owen, and Dawn all kind of know the truth, or they think, like we said, they think they know the truth. They think Xander was killed because of Max, and that would totally, like, that would tank this operation, right? And they all agree it's in their best interests to keep it quiet. So they all lie and tell CENTCOM and Washington that it wasn't connected. Xander's death wasn't connected to this at all. That was just a coincidence. And I'm absolutely sure that chicken will never come back to roost in this show. Like I said, secrets in television shows, or every secret character's share, is a Chekhov's gun. We have to admit this season is going to leave a lot of hanging chads. There's going to be a lot of stuff that doesn't get explained to us. Here's one of them. Owen's ex-girlfriend, who we haven't talked about a lot, but she's kind of still into him apparently. She got worried about him flying out to Europe. She flew out there to keep an eye on him. Kind of got interrupted from meeting with him because of Xander's murder and the fallout from that. She decides she's going to stay in Europe and still try to find or help Owen. And she gets a text from an unknown number saying Owen's going to Prague. Absolutely no idea who sent this message. Do you got any theories at all here?
Mm-mm.
Whoever it is, how they know Owen's going to Prague, how they know who Hannah is, what their motivation would be of getting her mixed into it.
Unless it's our mysterious blonde friend that we meet later.
Yeah, I don't think
But I don't know what that motivation would be.
Still, yeah, that's a weird one. That's one I think is like one of my number one things that I'm going to be watching in season 2 when it comes out is to figure out like why that happened. Here's another one to wonder about. So the last stage of the op, at least, well, this isn't really the last stage. The next stage of the op, the last stage of the operation to get Max reconnected with her high-level Russian intelligence buddy. The next step is to pay off the Russian mafia, right? Get back into the good graces. And the guy says to her, like, hey, what if, just because you brought in all this money doesn't mean people are not going to try to kill you. And she says, well, that's going to be my problem. He says, well, what if they paid me to kill you? And she said, well, I'd be dead already. And she would. That's my problem. What happens instead, he plays nice, pretends that he's taking the money, and they're buddies again. And then, like, okay, a few things about this. While they're doing this, Dawn and her team of commandos are out there to protect Max if anything goes wrong, or even possibly to kill Max if anything goes wrong in a different way. There's a drone.
Well, they tell him to stay in the truck.
They do. There's a drone that's flying surveillance over the op, and surveillance goes dark just as another hostile team arrives on the field. Their intention is to go in and kill Max. Apparently, she is being double-crossed by the guy that she's giving the money to. So, first thing, it's just weird that United States military surveillance goes dark right at this moment, right? I don't.
Yeah, but is there a connection between the people who attacked and the Russian guy she's talking to? Do you really think that they're in cahoots together? Or I thought they were separate.
No, I think they're.
Because
I think they are. They are in cahoots. I think that was established.
Okay.
Remember, and she murders him.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because she knows that. She tells him that you'll never believe that I wasn't going to kill you, so I'm going to kill you anyway.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, weird coincidence on the guy operating the drone says, oh, it's like, it looks like a software glitch. I gotta reboot. Now, if it's a software glitch, it's extremely suspicious. It seems more likely that someone on the inside, and that would be CENTCOM, is sabotaging this mission. And if I find out that this never gets paid off, I would give this massive minus 5 points. This coincidence is just too bullshit.
Yeah,
you can't.
They might not even answer it.
You can't leave something hanging around for me to chew on like that and not pay it off. Side note, I've already mentioned this shouldn't be CENTCOM that's involved in this, but even if it was, CENTCOM is they say that the drone is being flown out of by a teenager in a bunker underneath the Vegas Strip, which sounds clever. But even if this was supposed to be CENTCOM, CENTCOM is based in Tampa, Florida, not Las Vegas. Minus 5 points. Getting close here. So yeah, so the shit goes sideways, as they say. It is a double cross. We get a big run and gun action scene here, which honestly, okay, like I said, like Max even spelled it out. She said, if you were going to kill me, I'd be dead already. She's right. They don't have to do this elaborate thing of sending in this like military team. At any point, the guys escorting her in, just pull out a gun, put a bullet in her head. It's done. It's easy. Right?
Yeah, but again, I wasn't sure that they were in cahoots.
Okay.
I was thinking that the Russian gal with the blonde was a separate entity from the guy she was talking to at the table.
Okay. We're finally going to get...
And that would make it...
Right.
That would make it possibly plausible.
Yeah. So really, my note here... Well, okay. Assuming you're right, then I don't really have anything to stand on here. But if I'm right, and it is a double cross from the guy... like I said, makes no sense. Would have been easier to just put a bullet in her head.
Right.
It felt
Right.
I'm just saying, if that's the case, it just felt to me like this was just an excuse. Feels like a studio note of, hey, you need to have a big action scene at the end of this thing. So yeah. So now, finally, our blonde friend, I think, is the last thing we got to talk about. This is, I'll set it up for you. She showed up a little bit earlier as someone that was trying to chat Owen up at a hotel bar. Pretty young blonde lady. And Owen, after talking to her for a bit, suddenly gets the idea in his head that she's trying to set a honey trap for him. And he laughs about this, and she seems to be put off and takes off. And at the moment, comedically, we're supposed to think like, oh, Owen, you silly guy. That was just a normal girl. But she keeps showing up, so she's not a normal girl. And she shows up at the very end. Do you want to tell us about this and speculate?
Well, it's not a speculation. We find out who she is, don't we?
Yeah.
Do you want me to let that cat out of the bag?
Yeah, I think if the audience has gotten this far, I mean, but you're good to. It's good of you to mention. Okay, yes, massive spoiler, cliffhanger ending. Go for it.
She's Max's daughter, and she kills Max.
Yeah. And
or so it appears.
Yeah, and in that raid, that initial raid to try to kill Max, at the oligarch's establishment, whatever his estate, she was the one leading the commandos. And there was a really cute scene though, where she and Owen recognize each other. They're both like taking cover behind cars, and he's like, "Hey, it's you!" And he waves, and she like smiles and waves back, and then immediately starts locking and loading and shooting at her.
Shooting. Yeah, that is funny.
Very funny. Very funny. That's the show. That's our tradecraft notes of the show. Let's debrief this thing.
Agents, please report for debriefing on this operation. The director will see you now.
I liked it as a fun adventure series, not to be taken too seriously. However, having said that, we keep running into incongruous examples of our hero making clumsy rookie mistakes, from revealing too much of himself and what he knows about her to Max, which gives her leverage, not realizing his phone can be traced and placing an agent's name on the same piece of paper as a pseudonym. And then we pivot to the brilliant advice he gives to the SOG operator to murky the waters about the missile scandal, right? And then so many other brilliant things that he does and is expected to do. And that was the hardest part. They keep giving him these very difficult assignments, and he kind of learns on his own as he's going along. And then the assessment of Max and how she's using the leverage over all of them to see how far she can push. Pretty heady analysis for a wet behind the ears rookie who doesn't know his phone can be traced to keep an agent's name and their pseudonym separate. So it was fun, but I kept running into those incongruities in it.
Yeah.
4.0.
All right. I'm just a little bit higher. No, actually, you know what? Now that you say it, now that I hear you, I was going to say 4.5, but I think I was just really feeling it in the moment. This is probably more like a 4, actually. Although it's very satisfying. I'm pretty hot on the series. I am on record saying Slow Horses is the only truly comedic spy story that I've ever seen.
I can't stop laughing, and I haven't seen it. I just reading the book. It's hysterical. It's hysterical the way he runs down his minions.
I can't wait to get more of that. I think this one is in the box. This one, it's not as funny as Slow Horses, but it's kind of they're figuring out how to tell actually smart, funny spy comedies, and not just like super like slapstick stuff like Get Smart or Spies Like Us, which is god awful, by the way. Never should have named my podcast after one. Never should have named my podcast after one of the worst spy movies that I've ever fucking seen. I think Noah Centineo is actually fucking amazing as a comedic actor. I look forward to seeing him in anything else he does. The show demands a lot from him, and he pulls it off. In terms of like pathos and comedy and drama and stuff. And The show is a really kind of weird mix of like straight men and comedic performances. You know what I mean? Like the Abbott and Costello thing. And where like Noah is like the comedic guy. There's a lot of characters like his boss, Neeland, not funny at all. Total straight man. Dawn, straight man. Almost all the characters are straight men, except maybe for his the biggest one would be his colleague, his junkie colleague, Ferb.
Yeah, the SOG guy.
Right, that's
Yeah.
another comedic guy. So it's a different mix of like comic bits and straight men, but overall, I think just everyone is on the same page with the tone of the show, and every actor understands that their assignment is to make Owen come off as funny as possible, and I think they succeed. So I'll meet you at a 4. I'll meet you at a 4.
Okay.
Very much looking forward to season 2. So that's just how much we like the show. What we like to do is try to keep a separate rating. This is our park bench rating, and this is about how accurate a portrayal of intelligence operations we think this is. Obviously, this is a comedy. It's not going to score all that high. Before we get there, let's talk about our best and worst tradecraft as kind of a way to lead up to remind us why we're going to give this the park bench rating that we are. I'm going to go first on this one.
Okay.
Number 3. No, actually, I got to make the change. Let's see. Oh, and you made the point of the thing. Okay, I'll make it this way. I'll change my number 3 is Havana Syndrome. I don't think it's actually real. Or at least not connected to the FSB. And something might be going on, but I don't think it's a Russian plot. Number 2, easy, CENTCOM. What are you doing in this TV series? There's so many reasons that you're not the right agency and you're not doing the things that CENTCOM would be doing. My number 1 worst is Max telling Owen the secret about Dawn running ghost assets. The reason she gives for doing this makes no goddamn sense at all. Number 1 worst tradecraft, -5 points. Fred, your worst.
Well, his rookie mistakes, everything he naively reveals to Max during their discussion, from asking who her handler was, revealing to her that they had no hard file on her, which means you have no idea what I know and what I can burn, to using the pronoun her when talking to her about who pulled his nail out, to giving her his real name so she could go into social media and find out all about him. And come to think of it, why would he even be on social media if he was in the CIA? And why wouldn't the CIA catch that in his vetting process and make him remove it? Minus feasibility points. Right?
Yeah.
Number 2, when Owen writes an officer's name and their pseudonym on the same piece of paper, which is also a violation of Spy 101, that Nyland berates him for, more -5 points. And the worst tradecraft, number 1, when Owen tries to switch his phone back to call Hannah, Max throws it out the window because it can be traced. How does Max not know this basic tradecraft on Spy 101 that his phone can be tracked, can be used to track him? Mm-hmm. As Todd would say, -5 points.
Right. Now, real quick, too, the fact of Max being a pocket asset, and especially, like you said, the principal sin of the show, even though it's used in a clever way, and it's the premise of the show, is the fact Owen gets put into all these situations that he's not qualified for. I just kind of couldn't put that on my list because the show is so based on that. But that and her total lack of any documentation at CIA really are kind of like the real worst things. But they're so fundamental to the way the show needs to operate. There's some good tradecraft in this show as well. The idea of planting the Havana Syndrome intel as being quote unquote found during a military op, that's really good. Number 2 best, this idea of someone pretending to be not Bob, that's the cool double-edged sword of like, if you have this, like you say, a legend, where your real identity is so completely obscured that opens the door for someone that does know about you to pretend to be you and be able to pull it off. That's kind of scary as fuck. That's another thing. There's a lot of stuff. I'm really looking forward to finding out how it pays off in season 2. And my number one best is there's a whole bunch of stuff they do that seems very accurate about the way they handle code names and the way there's a person's name and there's internal code name and their external code name and their cover and the way these are all linked. It gets used a lot in the show in some interesting ways, like when someone knows one of those pieces of information but not another, it tells you something about what might be going on with them. I liked it a lot. What did you like, tradecraft-wise?
All right, number 3. Max and Owen steal a nun's phone on a bus to call Dawn and Janice. Number 2, Dawn's use of Max and Owen as simply a conduit to the new head of Russian intelligence and how they're both the expendable gun I'm using to get her. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And finally, number 1, Owen's brilliant but unrealistic advice due to his rookie status to help Janice solve the missile scandal problem, to use the photos from the notebook he stole from Max's safe deposit box. This brilliant advice we're asked to believe from the same rookie who didn't realize his phone could be tapped, let alone placed an agent's name and their pseudonym on the same piece of paper.
Right.
Minus feasibility points for that, but it was still brilliant tradecraft, no matter who thought of it.
Yeah, it's one of the highlights of the show as far as tradecraft goes. Park benches now 1 to 5. This has nothing to do with how much we like the show. It's just how realistic we think it is. 5 being a high score, 1 being a low. I think in my initial notes, I kind of gave this show a little too much credit. I think I was up at like a 2.5. It's definitely under the fold, right? 3 being, if 3 is the baseline, this is below that. It's got some very fundamental, basic flaws in the characters of Owen and Max, but layered on top of that, I think, is a lot of really good, accurate stuff for being a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at a 2.
Okay.
All right.
I'll go along with it.
It's so much so that if it wasn't for those 2 super basic flaws, kind of elephants in the room, I think this could have been a 3.5. I think this show gets the details right. It's just the core premise is what drags it down to a 2.
Well, the irony, too, is how you said this guy was a real CIA agent. So you would think some of those, they would be more accurate because of that, unless he didn't have as much say in it as, say, the directors or others.
And he's just a co-creator and executive producer. Something about this makes me think that this is actually someone else's story, but they got this guy that was in the CIA to provide the some authenticity
or premises or whatever.
Yeah. But
then they used a lot of dramatic license, that he may not have agreed with or whatever.
I think if this was Adam Sarelsky's show, it would have been a show about a Jew being discriminated against by the white guys at the CIA. So The Recruit. I recommend it. Go watch it if you haven't already. Sorry for spoiling it if you haven't already. And we'll catch you later. Thank you, Fred.
Yep. Good night.
Protocol 9 initiated. This podcast will self-destruct in 20 seconds. The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautix, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.